Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to episode 9 of Trail Society. I'm Corinne Malcolm.
I'm Keely Henninger.
And I'm Hillary Allen.
We're Keely and I are in our homes, in our offices, it looks like. But Hilly, where are you still?
I'm still in Madeira. I'm in Portugal. So I'm sorry if you hear some city noises. And it's a little bit dimmer lighting for me. It's evening for me and it's morning for you guys.
Yeah, we're going to talk about what you've been doing in Madeira in just a little bit. And then where are you off to next? You're not even coming home quite yet, right? You're gallivanting a little bit more.
Gallivanting, I know. So actually, I have family in the UK. So I'm actually going to London and kind of spending an untraditional Thanksgiving over there. And then some really cool things. There's a huge trail running community in London, and I get to do some, run events. We'll see how much running I'm doing, but then also some more book events too. So that's going to be really fun way to kind of wrap up my season before I go into the off season and resting.
Are you allowed to celebrate Thanksgiving in the UK?
You know what? I don't know, but I'm sorry. I'm going to go shoot a turkey if I need to find turkey or something. They really like, maybe it's grouse. They do more grouse hunting there. So I'm just going to go get one of those and have my own Thanksgiving dinner.
We routinely would celebrate Thanksgiving like off at like a training camp for skiing. So we'd be like in Canada or even like early season racing in Scandinavia. And you'd be like, okay, Thanksgiving in Sweden. Yay.
What do you eat there? Like salty fish?
Yeah, it's not the same. It's not quite the same as doing Thanksgiving at home, but we'll have you back stateside soon enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe I'll have to do a Friendsgiving after the fact. So
those are always the best.
That pie fix. I would need the pie fix more than
I know,
anything.
Corinne. I don't know what I'm going to do. I need to find a solution because I don't think I'm going to make a pie by myself in the Airbnb somewhere.
Probably not, but I'm sure you can find something. They do like potatoes over there. At least that's what, I'm telling myself. They like
not
potatoes.
Not going to lie. That's my least favorite part of Thanksgiving.
So maybe you can find potatoes though.
Well, if all else fails, I'll just have a big glass of Guinness and have that fill me up. So
that's fair. Thanksgiving's a mindset.
It is. It is definitely a mindset. You'll still get to be thankful for so many things over there. I think we're going to start us off with some news, some ultra running news stuff. Obviously, the UTMB World Series continues to make announcements. Actually, the Pilates are over here in the US right now, currently on a 3-week road trip, meeting with various race directors. They sat down with Jason Koop recently. I think the Gaylords, both Kim and Topher, are touring around with them so that they can kind of shake the hands of some race directors that they're going to be working with as they continue to grow the UTMB series worldwide. In part because I think, it's probably better for them to get face-to-face over here and try to talk with those race directors directly as they figure out how they're going to move forward. And they're continuing to announce races, and the big ones that they announced this past week. And I expect that we're going to hear more races about every 2 weeks from them are 3 races in Switzerland, including they purchased or are partnering with the Eiger Ultra Trail, which has been the Eiger 101K. They are also taking on the Trail Verbier St. Bernard by UTMB, which is another race that they have that's been established that they've purchased. And then a brand new race being run out of another ski area called Wild Struble by UTMB. So that'll be a brand new one. I think they're packing most of these races into the month of July. So maybe, they announced all their June European races. Now they're announcing July European races. So maybe we'll continue to build into August and the fall. The big one too is they purchased their first race in the UK, making Ultra Trail Snowdonia the first ever UTMB or by UTMB race to be in the UK. It's a race that I've wanted to do for a long time. And the biggest thing there is that they're moving the race. Normally, I think it's earlier in the spring. And it will be a July race now. It'll be the first weekend of July.
Because why not? Let's put all the races in July.
I mean, they've already announced like 6 races in Europe for the month of June. So you might as well announce all the races for July. They're also doing the last race they announced was a race in Corsica, which I'm very curious about. It seems like a new race as far as I can tell. Hilly, has this race existed before?
Yeah. So actually Restonica Trail, it's been around for a bit. I don't know exactly how long. I was actually, when I was living in France, I was going to race this, but then of course it was canceled in 2020. And I would say, having been in Corsica and I've done the GR20, it's so technical. Cool. And it's it's insanely technical, like just granite, everywhere, rocks, and like you just have to really watch your feet. So I think that's really exciting. It's really cool that they're Corsica is it's a bigger island, right? It's a destination place, but it's a pretty iconic, I think, route. And I know some of the race goes on the GR20. And
could
just
be hot,
another,
maybe if that is also a July race, that sounds like a hot race.
Super hot. And it's actually really, really popular with tourism. Like that's a really common through hike. So I'd assume it's like kind of like, the UTMB, there's a lot of traffic on that trail. But again, a really well-organized race. I actually just got a message from the race director of this trail announcing to me that he was so excited that he was actually a part of the UTMB series this year. So I think they're all really stoked. So hopefully more people will go to these races. And then another quick side note is, again, some of like the Snowdonia. I've actually wanted to do this race.
It looks like a very cool terrain to be running on.
I might actually get to go there when I'm in the UK. So I'll check it out for you guys.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. So I think that we'll continue to get these updates. I've spoken with a few US race directors who I believe will be coming on with the UTMB series. We're just waiting for those announcements to officially come out. So we won't say anything too soon. But as they've mentioned, right, they were looking at partnering with races that were already golden tickets into Western states, and with the HOKA sponsorship on both. I wouldn't be surprised if we start hearing from some of these US golden ticket races becoming part of the UTMB series in the coming weeks. So that'll be very interesting, in part because most of these races haven't yet happened. So will they be in effect for 2022 versus 2023? We don't know yet, but we got some more news.
Corinne, do you know if this partnership results in having more prize money?
UTMB has famously not really paid much prize money at all. Right. They only introduced prize money in 2018. Yeah. 2018. Okay. I think because they paid us for, was not expecting to get money in 2018 and was in the money in TDS. So in part because they're like, well, athletes have sponsors and sponsors have bonuses, and therefore they should be getting paid by their sponsors. And then they realized that not every athlete has a bonus structure, and not every athlete was getting paid bonuses by their sponsors. So but it's not, Western States doesn't have any, you don't win money for winning Western States. You don't win money for winning Leadville. Like most of these races don't have prize money. And even still, I think the win at UTMB isn't like, it's not like you're getting 10,000 euro for it from UTMB. It's been like 1,000 euros type of thing.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting with the development of all these race series, like Spartan and Solomon and UTMB with Ironman, like how the pay structure and the bonuses and all that's going to evolve, because clearly they're some of these big bang, race series, like Spartans giving big money for,
I don't know,
winning
if it's
those
sustainable
races
sometimes, right? Like the money has to come from somewhere. And so I think it's going to rely some on having non-endemic sponsorship money coming into these races. So once again, not from traditional sponsors, right? Mm-hmm. It's like when you look at the World Cup for skiing or mountain biking or whatnot, they'll have the title sponsors will be like beer or BMW or something different. So I think that we're going to have to rely some on non-endemic sponsorship money coming into the sport to be responsible for prize money. But people have been showing up to races that haven't had prize money for forever. I don't know that. Totally. I don't think it's going to stay that way.
Right. That's what I'm wondering.
Part of it.
Yeah. I'm wondering if there's just going to be a shift, because in the past, the races that offered money did not guarantee that those were the most competitive races. In fact, it was typically the opposite, right? Races with
Run
prize
Rabbit
money were the most, never drew that big of a crowd, right? But it pays like crazy.
Yeah. So
well, I think and maybe that's changing. I think it is.
It seems like it might be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think more money is going to come into the sport, and that I think will present itself with there being prize money offered at some of these races, but I don't know when that's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen. That didn't seem to be a priority with the Pilates of creating this series. Like it didn't seem like they were adding more money to the prize structure at UTMB as is, like to the championship event. So we're all waiting to see what happens here, but I think it's going to happen. The money has to come from somewhere. And these are for-profit companies, right? Like, do you want to, pilfer some of that money off to be prize money? They don't have to do that. So it'll kind of be a matter of time and waiting to see what happens with the professionalization of the sport. You wanna hit us up with that Alyssa Clark project?
Oh yeah, that's me. So in other news, I might just cringe at this just because I finished an ultra marathon recently, but Alyssa Clark, she's attempting the Pinhoti FKT, which is 95 marathons in 95 days. And
there are two separate projects, right?
Oh, sorry. She's attempting the Pinhoti FKT. So she's using her trek to raise money for the Free to Run. And its organization aims to develop women leaders in regions of conflict by giving women and girls the freedom to safely participate in outdoor sports and activities. So yeah, this is amazing. But I mean, the Pinhoti FKT, it's like these multiple, like day after day of running. It's like, all I have to say is just please eat up. Please take care of yourself.
Yeah. The Pinhoti Trail, for those of you who don't know what it is a 335-mile long trail through Alabama and Georgia. So pretty long. And this woman is known notoriously for doing 95 marathons in 95 days. She has the Guinness Book of World Records record for this. And so she's no stranger to
long distance
continual suffering. Yes. But it's good to see her using this trek for good. Hopefully she is having a big Thanksgiving beforehand.
Yeah. And then Free to Run, for those of you who don't know, this is Stephanie Case's organization, I think, right? Right. Stephanie Case is she's a lawyer for the UN. She's a total baddie. I can't say enough good things about Stephanie Case, but this is her organization. She's worked extensively in the Middle East, getting women and girls out running, which is, no easy task running in these areas, culturally or from a safety perspective. So very, very cool organization. And I'm happy that Alyssa Clark is using this FKT attempt to raise money and awareness for this organization. So I thought that was very, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. In other unrelated news,
races.
We have races. So many races. Holy smoke. So where do we start? Let's start with Tunnel Hill 100. Give a shout out to Stephanie Flippin, who is like kind of new in this space, but last year won the USATF 100-mile championship. And this year just won Tunnel Hill in 14 hours. She's
been doing a bunch of road ultra stuff. I think that's where her name is more known. I think Pat Regan is her coach. So fits the bill there. She's speedy over these kind of flat, long distances.
Yeah. Which is crazy. And in the men's race there, a guy named Phil Young beat Zach Bitter, who is like notoriously good at these kind of races, with like a mile to go, and won by 3 minutes. So I can't imagine how painful that is for both of those guys, but especially Bitter with that mile laugh. How painful.
What a pun, a good pun there. It was bittersweet. But I would also say that I think that, for Zach Bitter, I think he was on sub 12-hour pace until late in the race. So he the wheels came off there a little bit as Phil Young came through for the win. So very, very cool racing to see. It was a competitive little group of men, which is always, fun to see those guys duke it out for sure.
Yeah, totally. A couple more races that came in through my DMs was the Fat Ox 24-hour race. And here we had 4 women crack the top 8. And 4th woman in general was a woman who's a badass named Jackie Hunt. I'm not going to say your last name because I'll butcher it. But she got 4th woman and 8th overall. And so that race was stacked with women in those top 8. So that's pretty cool. And then one more shout out to a follower who's stoked on the show is Ellie Cookson, ran her first 50 mile and got first female 3rd overall in the UK at the Granite 50 mile. So shout out to her because that's pretty cool for your first 50.
Yeah, that's very, very cool for your first 50. And then in my backyard, last weekend we had the Dipsy race. The Dipsy was postponed. Normally it's a race held in June every year, and you're racing from Mill Valley up and over through Cardiac Ridge down into Stinson Beach. It's very cool. It's only 7 miles, and they have a really cool system in which in the invitational, which is kind of like there's normally an invitational and a runners group, and the runners are just kind of like, you didn't make the invitational, maybe next year type of thing for primarily for first comers. But the rest of the race is stacked based on gender and age. So you'll have waves going off with 70-year-old, 80-year-old men and 9-year-old boys will start together. And so there's an age handicap and there's a gender handicap for the race. And then first person across the finish line wins. And so if you're young and healthy, you have to pass 200, 300, 400 people in 7 miles to get what's called a black shirt. And the top 30 or 35 get a black shirt with their finishing number on it. And so it's a big deal to receive one of those, to have put together a race, to have passed hundreds of people to get one of those. But that also means that within that top 35, it's generally such a mix of people. Mark Tatum, 61 years young, out of Colorado Springs, won the Dipsy overall. He was the first non-Californian to win since the 80s, I want to say. The 2019, because it didn't happen in 2020, the 2019 winner, he was second. So it was 3 dudes in their 60s, 1, 2, 3. And then it was the young guns hunting. It was very, very cool. Chris Lundy, Diana Fitzpatrick, really cool people in this top 10 group. So I'm really excited to see little Sunny race this race again next year. That's Eric Schran's daughter, Sunny. And she wants that black shirt. So coming back in June, the Dipsy will happen again. And it's just really, really cool to watch young and old, everyone just duking it out for that top spot. And then I guess the other big race besides Haley's race that we'll get to in a second, was the JFK 50-mile race that happened out east this weekend. NCAA was also going on this weekend. This weekend had a lot of racing. It was very cool. But JFK is one of the most historic 50-mile races in the country. It's been going on for a long, long time. It's kind of Keely, have you ever run JFK?
Yeah, it was my second ultra ever.
Yeah, it's your home
Ate
turf
me
out
alive. There. Yeah, no, it was cool.
So it's this cool mix.
Sarah Bard crushed me in the last towpath, obviously.
Oh yeah, and then you guys repeated that at Chuckanut, right?
Yep.
Classic Sarah Bard. You don't want Sarah Bard hunting you down on a towpath in the last 10K of a race. It's not good for you. But this race starts off with a bit of technical trail, and then you're on flatter towpath for the rest of the race, which produces insanely fast times. Sarah Cummings, who was second after taking a wrong turn and adding some miles in the last year's edition of this race, ended up winning in 6:18.
So fast. Yeah.
Third
really
fastest
fast time
ever, followed by Sarah Bile, followed by Devin Yanko, who we all know took a DNF at Javelina to kind of prevent a fall on her knee becoming more than a niggle, in third. And she texted me and she said, that was really, really hard, but I was only 2 minutes slower than when I won the race 12 years ago.
Yeah. The times this year were really fast. Top 8 women were under 7:20 or something.
Yep. Because I think Anna May was 8th and she was 7:11 or something.
15. Yeah. Something like that. Uh-huh.
So
crazy.
Very, very cool. And it was cool too. Christina Randrup led the race early on, and she's kind of a young up and comer out of Seattle. She grew up in the Bay Area, running for Brooks. And it was cool. It was cool to see her being chased by Devin Yanko and Kimber Maddox for the first, 50K of the race before the Sarahs came through to crush everyone. So very, very, very cool.
And she held on still and still got 5th, which was pretty cool. And then Kimber got 4th in her first 50 miles. So
yeah, that's huge.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was so stoked to see her step up in distance there. And then we'll give a small shout out to Adam Peterman, for running the second fastest time ever. And if he doesn't get a shout out for ultra runner of the year for men or in the top 5, he's had such a great season. Obviously, he dabbles in kind of the sub ultra stuff as well. You know, he won the Moab Trail Marathon, which was the US ATF Trail Championship for the marathon. What, like a month ago, maybe a couple weeks ago?
Beating some stout guys too.
Yeah. So he's insanely talented, and I am so excited to see what the future holds for Adam Peterman.
Yeah. Hats off to him.
Big race time. Hilly goat.
Whoa.
Madeira. How long and how hilly for the hilly goat was Madeira this past week? And give us a little lay of the land.
All right. So some lay of the land. Does everyone know what a vertical kilometer is?
Explain it.
Uphill.
Okay. So a vertical kilometer is where you climb 1,000 meters in less than 5K. So in United States terminology, it's you climb 3,300 feet in less than 3.1 miles. Usually in Europe, they're, 2 to 3 miles, like of the races, right? But so that's usually when they stop. Like there's a vertical kilometer and you're like, we're done. We're at the top of the hill. Well, in Madiera Island Ultra Trail, you have 3 in the first, 50K of the race. The first 2 climbs are just a straight BK. And there's lots of stairs. It was extremely wet. We actually had some frost, a tropical island.
It looked cold. It looked chilly. Because you guys started at midnight too. For those of you who don't know, the race started at midnight. And when's the coldest time of day? Right before the sun comes up. That sounded brutal.
Yeah. So it was, so thankfully I had some time on the island before, but, but just being prepared. Right. And it's really tough too, because I think right before sunrise, you experience kind of a low in energy. And, if your body gets cold, you can it affects your muscles, it affects your digestion, it affects just your overall performance when you're trying to move. So the Madiera Island Ultra Trail, the highlight race, it's part of the Ultra Trail World Tour. The highlight race is the 115 kilometer. So they have several other races. It's extremely well organized all the way down to, like they have a marathon, but it's extremely, stacked in every single race event. But the trail itself is unique because the majority of the climbing, we climbed about 24,000 feet in the course of just under 73 miles. The majority of that climbing is concentrated in the first, 45 miles of the race. And it's a net downhill course. And the last marathon is quite runnable. And so, it's an interesting strategy. You're trying to figure out how hard should you push, but then how much legs should you, save for the end? So it's quite interesting because I love climbing. Obviously, I really like the steep things, but it's an interesting mix to try to be able to still maintain kind of a runnable effort at the end.
So 24,000 feet of climbing. What was the total descending?
I have on my watch close to 26,000 feet.
Okay. Yeah. And that's scary, right? You're like, I can climb well, but who's chasing me? Who's chasing me over the last 40K? Like, how terrifying is that?
Yeah.
Keely, do you have you got a specific question to throw?
Well, yeah. How did the legs feel on the last marathon?
Oh, really rough. So I think, that's to be expected. Right. And so, I actually really I was, toggling around on the Mute site. They have a lot of good statistics. I can't speak highly enough about this organization. They thought of pretty much every detail, like from, COVID testing of every single participant before they could even pick up their bib number and check in to do any of the races, to, buses transporting them to the start of all their individual races because they're on the other side of the island. All the races are point to points. And then just the live tracking and following everything. They had a bunch of, kind of statistics. So, and what was really cool too, is that, all of the race, from 2020, all of the shirts, even my little wristband, it all still says Mute 2020. So they recycled all of the materials for this year. So I think that was really cool. And so, obviously because of, because of the change for COVID and, the transfer of numbers over there, there still was maybe a few less people here, but still a pretty deep elite field showed up. And there were still a lot of participants like raring to go for all of the races. I was looking at the breakdown between females and men. I mean, it's still, it's still not the best. Like there was still 10% of the field were women for the 115K. It was pretty similar for the rest of the races. But I think with the number of elites that showed up for men versus women, it was still very comparable from that standpoint. And I was looking at the finishing rate because it was really rough. Like the first day, I mean, it was very cold at night, but the second day, the cutoff for this 115 race is 30 hours. So that puts it in perspective. And a lot of people had to stop that second night because it was torrential rain. And so it was really rough because changing the race to a November, it really changes the conditions.
Is it normally in March?
It's normally in April.
Okay. A spring race normally.
So basically, yeah. So, and I think it's notoriously wet this time of year. So every single descent, if you had just like, like these like unrelenting, uneven like stairs, it's a volcanic island. And so it's like with this mossy rock, it's like slippery and muddy. And so, that's fine when you have fresh legs, but like later in the race is very painful. And so the finishing rate for the men and the women, men was 67% and women was 60. So that's still pretty cool if there's like, only 10% of the field was women. So they still had a very strong standing out there. But yeah, so I mean, sorry, Keely, to get back to your original question. So then at the very end, running a runnable marathon at the end, I mean, I did it, but talk about, willpower. I think, we had talked about, earlier in the summer, with UTMB, personally, when I had to drop out of UTMB and kind of that whole process of like, a DNF and like, our last episode talking about guarding the psyche. I think all of that psyche was kind of guarded up for this moment, to be able to push through, low moments, because I might have won, but I did not have a perfect race, and it took a lot of mental toughness to keep pushing through all of the low moments I had. And when I look back on it, I started having a really low moment at the coldest time in the night. I felt like my shorts were freezing on my body, and, had to make it to the sunrise. I felt a little bit of, the like, oh yes, I heard my coach's voice in my head, attack at dawn. And I'm like, this is the slowest attack of ever. It's like slow motion attack, but I was trying my best, and I didn't feel great, but I kind of just, faked it until I made it. I think my stomach was on the cusp of turning the whole day, but I think that's ultra running. I don't think anyone had a perfect day out there. I mean, we had a strong field of women and men, and I think every single one of them was suffering pretty bad at one point.
Yeah. And that's the thing to remember. And I think I told my athletes this, I think it's good to remind yourself of this, right? Is that like, yeah, you're hurting. Everyone else is hurting too. Like, don't be wallowing in your own hurt out there, because the truth of the matter is that like everyone else is also hurting. Like, even if they're, making it look easy, they're still hurting. And so I think it's really important to remember that out in a race, is that like, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Everyone's suffering together, and you just have to embrace the suck and,
yes,
find a way to push through it.
I think that's so good to reiterate, right? Is like, I've had so many people come up to me after races that I've won, and they're like, wow, that must have been so lovely. And I'm like, no, it sucked. Like, yeah, there's parts that were great, and there's parts that just absolutely suck. And just because you run faster or slower doesn't make it like that much easier. Yeah. It's like good to remember that it's still like a mental game. But like, I guess for you, there's just so many logistics for this race, right? So like, what did you do kind of before the race to like settle the mind? Because I know you were texting us with like all these ideas before the race of like, do I do this or this? Like, how did you come to terms with that? Like, and like feel settled before the race?
Yeah. So I think for me, I like being prepared, but I also like leaving a little bit to be anticipated on the trails. Like, so I went out 2 weeks early before the race, to see the course. So I could kind of, I've been to Madeira before, but on the other side of the island. So I hadn't seen, I've heard rumors about how hard this course was, but actually seeing it and running on parts of it was really important for me to kind of prepare. And then to understand, how I would get my support, system. Max is here with me, and he was, we had a rental car and like driving to different parts of the island. I mean, the race was able, other racers, they could have, drop bags, but, and the aid stations were extremely well supported. But if you want to race and you want to have, a quick turnaround at aid stations, you need that extra support, and people helping you, change your bottles and things like this. And so I think seeing it, like I like to have it, a little bit beforehand. So it allows me to kind of visualize. I think visualization is really important for me, and to seeing which part of the race is important to kind of, attack at dawn, like to try to push it up, the fourth VK of the day, 38 miles into a race when you still have 8 more hours of racing to go. Woo-hoo!
You now know why Adam made you do so much insane training though, right? You're like, Adam. Oh, it makes sense. Adam's not trying to kill me. Adam knows exactly what was coming.
He knew exactly what was coming, but I was convinced that he was trying to kill me. But yes, shout out to you, Adam. Thank you. And it's also those times I think, and I mean, to stress that, I mean, I had every single training run I did on Madeira, it was raining. I was soaked. It was wet. It was cold. And so that was also a really good reminder to say, okay, you can't really control what race day is like. And, so that kind of portion I think is super important to kind of put yourself in this right mindset and to remind you that suffering is inevitable and you're going to have to find a way through it. But yeah, I think that's, the preparing from, the support system to the aid stations. The aid stations here were extremely well stocked. It was not like a typical European. They did have cheese, but it wasn't just exclusively cheese. There was a lot of fruit out here. Yeah, so that was good. But yeah.
Talking more to general nerves though, too. Like I think going into the race, obviously we were texting with you, but also just like, I think it's having spent enough time around you in like leading up to other races, like despite me knowing how much of a badass you are, and despite me knowing how good your training is, I feel like sometimes you don't necessarily like the race provides that confidence, provides that reassurance a little bit. Like that's in my mind, that's kind of where you take that confidence from. So I'm wondering, like going into the race, having had to drop out of UTMB due to like worried about an injury and not having gotten to race for a while, like how did you like come into the race without having that race confidence coming in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's because obviously I use both of you to like text my nervous energy, like, what do I do? And I think, yeah, Corinne, you were around me, we spent a lot of time before TDS. And I think it's like, I have this like culmination before a big race. Like I doubt everything. And I'm just like, I didn't do enough. Like I need to run 20 miles. It's like, no, you don't. Like it's okay. But I get really nervous and I doubt everything. And I just let kind of the nerves and the anxiety take control. And this happens, if the race is a Friday, happens about Monday, Tuesday are the worst days. And then kind of as, I get my bib and I start to just like calm down and have some quiet time and like, I think rest into the taper. I become like more calm and confident. But like, exactly like you said, I think it's like, I need that almost, just the race. It's like, once the race starts, that's my favorite part of the whole thing. It's like, that's what we came here to do. And it's not just the competition. It's like the moving, the problem solving. It's like, we all know we spend so much time doing this sport. I mean, that's the best part when you get to just run all day and eat. And that's all you have to worry about. So before this race, I would say there was a lot going on in my mind. There was a lot more nervous energy than normal. That's because of what you just said. I haven't raced in a while. I had another injury this year and was, really hopeful UTMB, and then had to pull the plug early. And so there was a lot, I was able to have some fun at Broken Arrow, and that was a nice confidence builder, but there's still a lot of doubt. And for me, I thought about this a lot during the race in Madeira, and I actually didn't realize it until I was here, is that in 2017, before I had that big accident, Madeira I had a big race win here. And then my world changed. And I always thought, I knew about this race, and I always thought it was like way too hard. And I thought it was like, it's way too long for me. I'll never be able to do that long stuff. And so being able to be on the start line and, have this race after, this 4.5 years of kind of battling to kind of get back. I don't really like that word, but it felt like that, so to speak. It carried a lot more weight. But I've been working closely with the sports psychologist, and I think that visualization and then instead of holding all those emotions in, maybe like nervously texting you guys and like Adam, that really helps. And that's why I think community coaches just talking about this crazy sport is what, allows you to kind of break through these moments and,
use your support squad.
Confidence. Yeah.
Lean on your support squad, right? Like they're here, we're here, whatever it might be, right? Text us. Yeah. Your support squad, your support sports squad. There we go. SSS.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah. And Haley, I know you did a lot of big runs before this, obviously. Do you feel like that helped you a lot with fueling strategies and all of that during the race? You said that ended with a lot of downhill. Did you feel like that changed how you fueled at the end? What did you kind of go into this with? Did you go for the cheese at the stations? What was your strategy?
Yeah. So actually I think that was the most important thing for me. So the one thing that I've learned so much through my injuries and through recovery is the importance of fueling. And if I want to stay healthy and if I want to do these big training, I need to eat obviously after the run, but eating during a run is so important. And I think for this race, I practice that so much on my long runs of just eating, practicing my race nutrition, making rice cakes and taking that stuff with me. And so when it came to race day, I knew there was going to point where I was just going to be drinking Coke, but I was actually able to eat gels, like my spring energy gels until the very, the last, couple hours of the race, which is quite impressive. I think that's because I practiced that. And
then we're talking a 17-hour race, right? It's not your traditional 115K. Okay. So she was able to eat gels for 14 or 15 hours. So let's just put that into perspective there. Okay. That's a lot more. A lot of us get sick of stuff around 6 hours. So we doubled that here, which is great. That's huge. That practice trained your gut well to be able to tolerate that in a, well, we weren't hoping. We thought it might be really hot and really humid.
We were talking about this.
The weather might have actually benefited there. I mean, running in the cold's not fun either, but thermoregulation is hard.
It was, you're right. And that's what I was worried about too. Cause we're talking about running in a humid climate is like running in a super dry, hot climate. Cause if you evaporative cooling just is not effective. Right. And so it was still very, very humid and wet. And so it still was, I still felt very muggy, the whole time. But then every time there was a breeze up high, you could get cold. But then, after the sun came up, it was a beautiful sunny day. So, practicing that. And then also, potatoes, those are great.
Love potatoes.
Oh man, it was awesome. And then, just also, relying on, I love that your sports support squad. I got it.
It's like a sport. It sounds like a sports bra of some sort, but that's okay. We're here for you, just like a sports bra would be.
Sports squad.
We're sometimes smushy and we're sometimes sweaty, but we're here for you.
Sometimes clammy, but then that means it's a job well done. Weird. Okay. But like, effective communication at aid stations, it's like not rushing through. Like I took the time to change my clothes 2 times during the race because I was soaked.
I noticed that. I saw the photos. I was like, Haley's in a white shirt now. This is so good.
Oh, I know.
Really smart.
It was really funny too, because I remember like I was at the first aid station and just like standing there changing my bra. This could be a good segue into the next. Wait, I wasn't changing my bra. I wasn't like, but like I had my, I was just changing my shirt like in the aid station, like whatever. And then there's this guy with the video camera zooming in. And I'm like, cool. Thanks, guys. But no, I mean, and I was, it's funny. I actually, for inspiration too, I watched the Long Shorts episode, the Salmon TV episode with Francois and Courtney. And, Courtney, winning UTMB, having an incredible performance and having, DNF'd at Hard Rock, it's all part of your process. So, and even Francois, like he had an early season race that didn't go according to plan. And both of them were nutrition related. And so it's like that reminder and like kind of that inspiration and, taking the time to take care of yourself at the aid stations while still moving with purpose. I think that that's a really good,
efficient, not rushed, right? You can be efficient in an aid station without rushing. And that's something I stress with everyone, right? Go in with a plan, do what you need to do, and then get out of there. But you don't need to be frenetic. You don't need to rush, like take care of yourself so that you're fine, right? Take that minute to change the shirt because it's going to pay dividends later.
But it's so hard to do. Like, I don't do that. I get freaked out, and I get freaked out for people racing UTMB when they're taking too long. I'm like, go faster. But actually you have so much time.
You're going to be so taken care of for Western States, Keely. We've got you, girl.
Can I come out there and do it?
Course.
Oh my gosh. But like, seriously, support sport squad. Yeah. But the other thing, just for let's have some stats, because I was trying to, like Max and I are practicing this, like of trying to have an efficient change of the aid, but like keeping it kind of under 2 minutes. But there was a time in Curral, this is about 40 miles in, you have a huge climb. It takes 2 hours and it's only 10K because it's 1,400 meters up. So it's a huge climb late in the race. I've already had been running for 9 hours at this point, and you have a huge portion of the race left. But, I was cold. I needed to kind of have a change. And I was be 12 minutes ahead of Ekaterina at that point. And, he timed me in the aid station. I took an extra maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds in the actual aid station. And Ekaterina was very fast and efficient, and she didn't change clothes like I did. But on that next climb, I put another 10 minutes on, and so it's like, if you move efficiently and if you then, put yourself in a good headspace, take care of yourself. I got enough food. I got what I needed. And then I was, under the orders of Adam to attack at dawn. Then, that's what I did. And it makes a difference if you take those extra seconds to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to adapt out there at all? I think most of us talk about like how much troubleshooting is involved in ultra running. And I'm just wondering, I think that'd be kind of a nice kind of summary lesson from this race is like, did you have to adapt? Did you have to, went in with a plan, obviously, right? Like, what did that look like if that happened at all?
Yeah. So I went in with the plan, and my plan is normally to start from behind and, put myself in a good position and chase. Well, I led from the very beginning. And so I had a target on my back the whole time. So I really had to practice not running scared and not letting that anxiety take over me, and to run with confidence, to run with purpose. And for me, it's always about trying to, it sounds selfish, but it's really a practice of mindfulness, of just being like worrying about yourself. Like, how does this effort feel? Like constantly checking in with myself, taking care of myself, eating, drinking, and, judging how I'm feeling while still maintaining a focused, racing attitude. And so that was the first thing that I had to adapt to. But of course, like, my stomach, I was able to stick to a nutrition plan, but I didn't really practice with potatoes, certain, I was eating a lot of the fruits that they had at the aid stations. And, just kind of practicing that, like, trying to figure out when to drink Coke and, what was sitting well with my stomach. And then also I was not expecting it to be so cold. And so really I didn't expect to change clothes that many times, but so really adapting that and knowing that I needed it, I went back and forth so many times, do I change them? Do I not? I was no, take the time and do it. And yeah, the other thing is I think that the cold, I think it affected just muscles, and cramping, kind of on the downhill. And so, dealing with that, easing into it, and then still finding a way to move efficiently on that last, marathon of the runnable downhill. All I got to say with that is poles are your friend on the downhill.
But poles can also not be your friend. I feel like that's the most perfect segue you could have done.
That was great.
Because
nice work, Hill.
I don't know about you guys, but I've raced in Europe now, 4 or 5 times. And in most of those races, I've taken poles. And yeah, they can be your friend, but they can also be your enemy in terms of other people's poles. How many of you have been in a Congo line in the beginning of a race where there's a bunch of European men or American men? I don't want to discriminate here, but a bunch of men normally in front of you who are jabbing you with their poles and not letting you pass and using those poles as a weapon. And talk about trail etiquette. That is just not cool in my book. I'm hey, let me pass you. I'm going to pass you in 20 miles anyways. Did you notice any of that here, Hill? Did you have weird experiences on the trail with any men or women or anything around that?
So in past races, yes. In this race, no, because we had a big street start at the beginning. And so we had time to space out. But I would just have to be kind of forceful. And in the past, I've know how to use your poles, Keely. You just have to use them to just kind of get an elbow and then just put the pole in front of the other person and just pass them aggressively.
Extend out back. You use that likey pole grip. It's attached to your hand and just really give it a good flick. For those of you watching this, not listening to it, you got to really flick your hand back and create some more space for you when these dudes are breathing down your neck. I got taken out at Transvolcania. So at Transvolcania, you are not allowed to use your poles for the first 15K or something.
That was a new rule because of something that happened at Transvolcania.
Huh.
And that's because I think people were
stabbed.
Skewered.
And that's also, once again, it's another volcanic island. It erupted this year, hence the reason the race did not happen, and it's postponed date this fall. Okay. Very scary and sad. And the beginning, you start at this lighthouse and you're running up the trail. And I was told explicitly, I was running for Solomon at the time, told explicitly by a bunch of Solomon athletes, it's going to be insane. But you have to be so careful trying to pass people because the trail is really sandy, but everything around it is volcanic rock and it's so sharp. And so Emily Forsberg the year before had stacked it off, had clipped a toe and stacked it and cut her hand, I think, or something, but it was to the bone almost on this rock. So it was people are just insane at the beginning of these races. And I think in part the European races are so much bigger, maybe. There's just so many more people starting these races that it seems trail etiquette, the gun goes off and trail etiquette goes out the window.
And for a lot of these European races now, and this is for the case for UTMB too, if you start with poles, you have to finish with them. It's kind of it's not part of your mandatory kit, but if you choose to start with them, you have to finish with them. And that was what the mute was. What happened at Mute as well. That was one of their regulations. And it can be kind of scary. I mean, especially in a master, I've also run Transvolcania, Corinne, and it's scary at the start without poles. So
yeah, a dude in front of me dropped something and bent down, stopped to grab it. And I just got fully taken out by it. Just it caused a bike crash, essentially. We just all went down because this one dude dropped his poles or a water bottle or something and stopped in the middle of the trail and bent over to grab it. And we all just stacked it on top of him. So you have to kind of keep your wits about you. My first European race was Trail Worlds in Portugal. And it was honestly kind of a similar route to something like Madeira, where it was just over 50 miles, but it had like 17,000 feet of climbing. And it was like unseasonably warm. It was a late October race. And we started and we were on a road, and then we climbed out of there and we were just getting pushed and jostled. And I was like, we have so many more miles to run. Like, why are you pushing right now? Like, why are you shoving right now? Like in the start corral, your like feet are off the ground because you're like so pressed up against like everyone around you. Like it's so different. Maybe this is totally normal European racing, but coming from racing like only trails in the US or in Canada to Europe, you're like, wow, I am going to die in one of these mass starts.
It's really scary. And I think it's also just a difference of the sheer number of participants in endurance sports in Europe. It just feels so much more intimidating. Like, heck, I felt that way at this. I mean, Corinne too, at the start of UTMB. Like, you're kidding me? Like,
I joked that there was a preem, like there was like a bonus if you got to Lazouche first, because people are running so fast. I was like, did no one tell us? Is there a bonus in Lazouche? Like, why are people running so fast?
Yeah, maybe did Strava put one on there? We'll see.
Yeah, maybe. So it's insane. I think the volume is part of it. But what else do you think? You know, we've all obviously had these experiences in Europe, but what can we kind of take away from that to either to bring to the trails in Europe or in, you know, New Zealand or Australia or in the US? Like what defines quote unquote proper trail etiquette? Because we've all had bad experiences on the trails in the US, be it catcalling, be it, you know, multi-use trails, right? Horses, bikes, humans. We all three of us ride bikes. So we've got perspective kind of on both sides there. Like, what can we do as trail runners to practice proper trail etiquette? And then what things should people be avoiding doing if this is kind of, you know, news to them?
Yeah. I mean, I think just to kick it off, it's like just being friendly. My biggest thing with how COVID has influenced trail use is that there were a lot more people on the trail, but they were like extremely unfriendly. And I think that
trail
impacts
newbies.
Me to the nth degree. It makes me so sad. It's like my happy place, and it's like overly populated with people who are negative and not like super friendly and maybe not as up to date on trail etiquette. And so I think the biggest thing is like to pass with like courteous, like in a courteous way, and also just like be friendly to the other people on the trails, because we're all out there like together. Right. And yeah, that was my biggest thing that I've noticed recently is like, that is just not a priority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like, say hi, be nice. Right. Like, I'm a huge fan of say hi, be nice. Like, even if you're running, and maybe this is one of those things, running with your headphones in, right? Like, say hi, be nice. I'm a huge fan of the one ear in if I'm running by myself, right? Like, I want to be able to hear what's going on around me. I want to be able to hear if someone's coming up behind me, both from a safety perspective, right? There's a lot of safety in this too, but also in a trail user experience, right? If I come up behind you and I'm trying to say hi or, you know, alert you to me being present, and you can't hear me because you got your Beats headphones on, right? And you're just like rocking out on the trail. I want you to rock out on the trail, but I want to be able to, you know, like have you acknowledge that you're sharing this space with other people. So that, I think, you know, is a huge thing that I saw during the time of COVID too, is just more users out there who maybe weren't as familiar with this. I don't know how many times I've scared people saying, you know, like being like, you know, saying hi. And I've always been in the boat too, when it comes to passing people, that I don't necessarily start with like an on your left or on your right. I try to like, because, you know, try to say that nicely while you're breathing. Like, even if you're not breathing hard, try to say on your left without sounding like a total like meanie, right? Like, it's pretty aggro. Okay. So what my suggestion is, you warm them up with a nice, like, hi, good morning, like, howdy partner, whatever you want to yell at them from an approachable distance. And then you say something like, I'm going on your left, or like, I'm just going to sneak by, because the truth is if you say hi to them and they're not wearing headphones and they can hear you 15 feet away, they're going to naturally move to one way, like, or they're going to scatter, right? They're going to scatter and you're going to run down the middle, but it gives them the opportunity to like, be like, oh, someone's here, I'm going to move over. And then you can scoot by without like scaring them, sounding like a giant jerk as you sprint by them and they mutter show off under their breath. Not to say, not from personal experience or anything, but that has been something that from coaching juniors and sharing the trails with many, many multi-use users, that I always do the, the hi, the good morning, the howdy, the hello there, and then, make your way around someone safely.
Totally.
So
and make the decision for them. Right. Cause like whenever I say, hey, I'm coming up on your left, it's like, they're like, is it my left or is it her left or is it the other left?
I don't know what left is anymore.
Exactly. Like they get so flustered. It's like, oh, left, I don't know. And so then they just run in front of you.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you like kill them with kindness, you're like, hey, I'm coming up on you, or like coming up behind you. Then they like can get their bearings and they just move. And then they're very happy. And if they're not happy, you say hello again. And then you say it again. And you just keep killing them with kindness until they have to say hello back or they feel very awkward. And then all is good in the world.
Yeah. If someone says anything mean to me, my tactic is just to yell, have a nice day, which is like a very, I don't know if that's passive aggressive or not. I kind of mean it genuinely, but I've gotten like heckled on my bike by cars, like, cause they don't like where I'm riding or something of that nature. And I can't hear what you're yelling at me half the time disgruntledly from your vehicle. And so I just yell, have a nice day, because what are they going to do? They're not going to attack me after that. Right? Like probably not.
I love that. That's so great.
Don't know. But yeah, your safety is obviously important in all this too. So don't provoke maybe altercations out there with, kill them with kindness, not altercations.
But I mean, can we kill them with kindness if they're being rude too? Like what if we get catcalled? Like, I like how this whole conversation started from someone's DM, right? Telling us about like a very unfortunate encounter she had with someone on the trail. I think there's certain scenarios where we can't just kill them with kindness. Like how do you guys respond to that? I don't know. I don't get catcalled a ton here in Portland. It's very like commonplace to be running, but obviously when I've been caught very off guard and I don't have a good response. But it definitely doesn't feel good.
Or like 30 minutes later, you're like, I should have yelled this.
Yes, that's always what happens. I mean, I think it's a fine balance between standing up for yourself and also
putting yourself in danger.
Right. And so I maybe this is wrong, but I've always kind of used maybe a little bit of like sarcastic humor just to kind of put that back on them. Like, is this really appropriate? Like, for instance, when I was this happened here and I was out on a bike ride and of course I'm in spandex, like, and I'm in this like kit that maybe you guys saw, it's like leopard print on the bottoms. And I'm like standing in a cafe and I'm getting, they're awesome. Paradis. They're an awesome like new cycling brand. But so I was in this bar getting a cafe, like halfway through my ride. And I was like looking around, I turned to pay. And then I turned around and these two men were just like literally eyes glued to my butt. And I'm just like, and so I look at them and they're talking. I look at them and I like look past and I'm just like, and I look at them and I'm like, what are you looking at? You know what I mean? And then they kind of were just like, oh, like, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? And then I was just like, okay. And then I smiled and then I walked out. Like, I was just like, come on, like, what are you doing? And I think, I mean, that's like, maybe differences in culture. Right. But, I think European lifestyle, maybe more in the city, it's more like out on the streets. Right. But, it's just like kind of just, someone might not know that it offends you unless you tell them, but it doesn't have to be a very aggressive way. You can still stand up for yourself in a way, that feels appropriate, but not, not putting, like you said, putting yourself in danger. But that also sucks because sometimes those brilliant things don't always come to you at the moment that you need them.
Yeah. The listener who sent us an email said that she was running by herself. She was hiking by herself when this like person said this to her. And the person they said this to her was in a group. They're on the trails out east. And she was like, I was frustrated because I didn't have anything clever to say back to them. And I really didn't want to like cause like have an altercation. Like I'm hiking by myself on this trail. Like I might have to see them again on the trail too, like coming back down to the trailhead or whatever. Like, yeah, that'd be really hard. Like, do you just like laugh it off and be like, okay, dude, like bye or whatever? Like it's that is like that. I'd feel way different if I was running like with my roommate or something, like running with another female even, right. To have that kind of like protection in numbers thing. But yeah, it's definitely off-putting. It's like you shouldn't be commenting on people's bodies anyway, right? And I kind of wanted to sass them back, and my natural inclination is to just throw sass back at people. But I recognize that's like not always an option. I had a male athlete. This was like an episode of Road Rage. He was on his bike. This happened a couple of years ago. It was so messed up. He was on his bike. a driver. He was bike commuting home after working out east. He's a professor, and the driver like kind of was being a jerk to him. And so this athlete, as he described it to me, I made a universally understood, not so nice hand gesture. And the driver like basically like like blocked him at the next intersection. And like they had physically had a physical altercation with this guy on a bike. Like police had to get involved type of thing. Like how traumatic. And it's like, you don't know if that person in the car or the person on the trail is having a really bad day. Doesn't mean that it's what they're about to do is good for you or good for anyone else. But it's like, yes, like I think you need to stand up for yourself. And yes, like people need to be aware that they shouldn't say things like that. But it's like, I also don't want to give anyone the advice that's going to put them in a situation like that. Mm-hmm. Right. Because I probably also would have given that guy that hand gesture that was in the truck trying to cut me off. Or I give the thumbs down a lot. I'm a big thumbs down fan, where instead of giving the middle finger to someone, if I'm out on my bike, I give the universal, like, I'm disappointed in you gesture of a thumbs down. But yeah, like I don't want to give anyone the advice that puts them in that position of getting hurt, getting attacked, being assaulted, whatever it might be. Like that is not okay advice either. So I think that's the unfortunate truth of being an athlete, being a female athlete. I can't imagine what it's like for athletes of color in that situation too, right? Like that's just another layer of that puzzle, of feeling unsafe and unwelcome potentially in that space. Like I don't have the best answers there. And I think that we all just I want this person to know that they're not alone, right? Is maybe the bigger thing there is that you're not alone. This is not to say it's a universal experience, but a lot of us have been put in a similar situation.
Yeah. And my default is to just not say anything back because you never know who's behind the wheel.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I don't want to mess with that.
Yeah. Sorry. What was that? I couldn't hear you. Can you say that again? I don't know.
And yeah, that was that like to echo kind of what Keely said earlier. The first time that actually happened to me this year was someone yelling at me on the trail, like escalated extremely quickly. And I reverted to what Corinne said. I was like, have a nice day. I like,
don't know what's going on with you.
Like I kept on saying that when he kept on like yelling profanities at me when I was like over on the side of the trail.
COVID brought out the worst of people on the trail, right?
Goodness. Yeah. And so you never know. And I felt extremely unsafe and like my adrenaline spiked and I was just like, okay, like, it was very unpleasant. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I kind of have been like combating that with running with a lot of my girlfriends here in Portland. However, I find that like we're all equally on edge. So if somebody's treating us poorly as well, if like we're running 4 abreast or something, it's like almost easy for us to lash out as well. And so we've had to be like mindful to be like, okay, we're in a group, like we might be taking up more trails. So like, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Like COVID's been hard on everybody and we're just not going to say anything and we're going to run by. Cause I think we're all kind of on edge and like people are taking away our happy places and they're becoming more populated as well. Right. And it's just like, it's not good for anybody. And so I think we all need to be mindful.
Yeah. And I think that's a great, that point in particular is a great way to round some of this out. Is that right? Like being extra cognizant of the space you take up too. So it's like, I'm a person who's like, okay, we have to get off. Like we're going to like give, like we're yielding space to other people on the trail. Right. My husband is notoriously terrible at moving over on the trail. And I'm like, Steven, like get over here type of thing versus our roommate, Eric, where it's like, no, Eric, you're allowed to keep running. Like you don't have to, like, it's almost impossible to get him down the trail because he'll just keep stepping off to like let people by. And like Olivia and I will be like a half mile up the trail before Eric like gets back on the trail because he yields to everyone. So there's got to be a happy medium there as far as like, like how well someone's moving, right? If people have big, heavy backpacks, I'm like, okay, you take the trail. This is a cumbersome experience for you. If, a bike going uphill versus downhill, can I give them space? What is easiest? Like, I think it's just really important. Rules are different everywhere. There are unwritten rules. There are written rules as far as like who yields, who doesn't yield. But I think if we're all just being cognizant of the space we take up and being aware that we're sharing that space with other trail users, be it bikes, be it horses, be it hikers, be it people who've never been on a trail before, be it small children who are uncontrollable, or dogs, or, dogs on leash or off leash, like, right? Like you are sharing the trail with all these people independent of whatever rules exist or don't exist or arbitrarily exist or imaginary, like being cognizant of the space you take up. Although we like to take up a lot of space as much as possible as, go women, go people taking their space, but on the trail, trying to share it with other people, be cognizant of the space that you are occupying so that other people can also occupy space on the trail.
And I just did want to add one quick note too, because I've had some pretty negative, things in Europe or just racing in general. It's not necessarily in Europe. I've just the majority of my time raced in Europe. So a lot of times when they hear it's a female voice in the trail, like they speed up or they don't want to get over, or you have to forcefully like kind of be like, on your left, or forcefully like pass them in like kind of a precarious place. Cause they literally, it's like, okay, I've said on your left, I said, I'm going to pass you and you're still not getting over. So that's when I'm a little bit more forceful in a race. But I will say it was really cute. In this race, there were two separate occasions where there were these two guys running with me. And I think some of them were from like, the marathon or something like this. And I can understand a little bit of Portuguese. And he was like talking to his friend. He's like, yeah, that's the first lady. That's the first lady. Okay. We have to help her. Cause I couldn't speak Portuguese. There are these people and I was trying to pass them. And like, they would see me coming up on a person and they would yell in Portuguese to the people ahead, like first lady coming, get over. And it was like literally these two guys, they wouldn't leave my side for like, and I was like, do you want to pass? Like, no, we're good. And like, they wouldn't leave my side for like 5K on this downhill. And then the next uphill, I dropped them, but like, it was so nice.
Yeah. Not awesome. Everyone's bad, right?
No.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I had a guy,
not all people.
When I was doing CCC, I feel like at first I was having very negative experiences with all the males I was trying to pass, and to their credit, it's not their fault, right? Like I think we're very grateful to live in the United States. We're definitely a little more progressive in this space, right? Like for some of these European countries, it's still weird for them to see women running on the trails, let alone having them pass them. And so the beginning of the races are always weird, but towards the end, I would catch men and they would be like, oh, you're hunting down second, or you're hunting down whoever. And they would be stoked and they would be like, okay, vamos, like, let's go.
Yeah.
And that's really fun at the end, right? Is to like have someone be like, oh, well, I was suffering, but now this girl caught me and I can help her catch someone. So like, I'm going to get out of my suffering. And you can view it in a positive way as well, even if maybe they do just not want to get chicked. We don't know.
Yeah. I think that maybe that's like the essence of the beginning of any trail race is like really aggro and like, it's like tranquilo, like, okay, let's chill out a little bit. And then it's like, they do chill out a little bit towards the end. And it's like, okay, like my ego has been checked, or I am settled. I'm tired. I am like willing to be, better in sharing that space or acknowledging that people around me are doing well. So
totally,
that's really cool.
Yeah. And like, I guess this kind of ties in the last point of this, and Corinne and Hillary, I'm interested to hear your thoughts around this, but I feel like when that happens, sometimes you have to run off trail, right? And you like create new trails, you run into like the brush and all this stuff. And like, that's not good on the trail system either. Like I see a lot of people in Forest Park now, they get nervous because it's COVID and they want to be away from people. So they start cutting and making new trails. And like, that's not good for the environment. And so like with over 100 million new people hitting the trails based off of like how much All Trails has grown, how do you think that's impacting like the actual trail and the environment around that?
Yeah. And this is very US v Europe, right? Like we're very much more about like, oh, we're on the trail, we're staying on the trail, we're watching out for erosion, that kind of thing versus Europe, where it's like, no, this is the fastest way up and down the mountain. I'm going to cut these switchbacks. So I think that there's some natural cultural differences there as far as like how trails are maintained within these environments. But yeah, I think it's really important that we're cognizant of, being aware of when the trails are really muddy or really wet and like we're going to cause a bunch of damage to them, right? Like we all know, like we don't go mountain biking when it's muddy because that's like we can create a lot of damage to a trail system during, on those trail surfaces. But you're right, like, making new trails is, not the ideal situation for maintaining the wilderness in these areas. Hilly, any thoughts there?
No. That was the only thing I was going to add is that it's my pet peeve. Like when you're outside and like, just walk through the puddle, man, like just walk through it. Like you don't need to go around it. Like, so I think a lot of these things,
it makes the trails wider, right? Like if you every person who goes around the puddle makes the trail wider. So wear some Gore-Tex, man. get your feet
Exactly.
wet.
And that's why we have like these amazing companies, these like, and they're making this gear to go outside, like get dirty. It's kind of fun. Like just go in the shower with your clothes and wash off the mud. It's fine. But like, I think with this too, it's also with so many people getting out on the trails, I really want there to be more of an educational based system of like teaching people like, okay, this is what you should do. This is how you need to like leave no trace, and leaving no trace, I think relates to, making sure that like trail stewardship, like making sure you prevent erosion. I mean, where I even live in Boulder, they're super strict about where they allowed cyclists because it's like, huge trail erosion that's really big in hiking. And so there's only designated areas and where they allowed mountain bikers. Right.
Same in Marin in the Bay Area as well.
Yeah. And yeah. So, so I think, and maybe there's a little bit of a war there, but there's actually like, kind of like a purpose. It's not supposed to be like runners or cyclists, but I think there should be, to try to figure out how to educate people more. And I think that's also kind of goes like what we've talked about on this podcast about mentorship, right? And that's like getting people more into outdoors and trails and talking about, okay, what that actually means. Like, get dirty, like, get out there.
Yeah. Teach your trail buddies, right? Lead by example, right? That was my biggest deal coaching juniors in Bozeman. I was like, hey, every single person, because we're going to pass them with a line of 10, 11-year-olds. Like every single one of you is going to say, hello, thank you, good morning, like all those things, because we want to continue to use these trails. And we want the people that are interacting with us, even if they're not always nice, to know that we're being nice and we're trying to be courteous, because no one wants to be passed by a dozen 11-year-olds carrying ski poles. So it's like, you have to lead by example. You have to teach your friends. You have to teach the newbies that are going to show up to your group runs, because that's how we all learn, right? That's how Steven gets better at sharing space on the trail. It's how Eric gets better about being on the trail more frequently. Like it's all like, it's important to lead by example in those areas. And there's definitely organizations doing that work with Leave No Trace. REI does a bunch of cool educational stuff with hiking groups and trail runners and mountain bikers. So looking for those resources. And then if you are experienced in these things, like be that mentor for the trail newbies, because we're welcoming more and more people onto the trail, off the roads, off the tracks, that kind of thing. So to step into that role, be that mentor to continue to teach all of us that we can be, good stewards for the trail, and we can be nice to each other out on the trail as well.
Totally. And like take the initiative to like volunteer to do some trail work too, right? Because I definitely don't do this as much as I can. And with like COVID, it definitely became harder over the past couple of years. But I know in the past, like some of my friends who are big hunters or big mountain bikers, they almost like for a while scoffed at trail runners for not doing as much trail work and not being as big a trail advocates. But I see that changing. And I think there's also just tons of space for it to change. And so I'm going to be better at it. I think we all can be better at it. Like there's tons of trails for us to walk on, but they don't maintain themselves. So that's kind of my call out there.
Yep. Look for your local community. They will be running like trail work days, generally through different like various volunteer organizations. If you're running 100 this year, it's a great way to get your volunteer hours in. It's required for many hundreds within the US at least. But I think that's really, really important, because you're right. The mountain bikers have for the longest time, they have carried a lot of the trail maintenance work on their shoulders for sure. In many, many communities that the three of us have all lived in. So be good trail stewards, sign up for a trail work day. It will go a long way for your community. And it's really satisfying to think like, I did that for that trail.
Yeah.
Sweet. Should we slam?
Slam it.
Yeah.
Slam it. Hilly, you want to slam first?
Yeah. So I have a really cool slam, and I'm really sorry for our listeners in pretty much everywhere else besides New Zealand. Really happy for those of you in New Zealand. And I'm also jealous because got a cool message from a scientist over in New Zealand. He's studying under Dr. Stacy Sims, and he's looking for people, specifically women, to participate in a research study. And so I want to help him get some participants. So those of our listeners, if you are a woman, know of a woman who is an ultra runner, and you would want to be in a metabolic study, basically kind of studying how metabolic considerations across your menstrual cycle of healthy female ultra endurance athletes, how that basically they're just trying to study this. And so I will share with you, this is Andrew Dole, his details. So he's given his phone number. He said I could share it. So we're going to also link this in the show notes, but so just hit him up if you are around. So it's New Zealand phone number. And we can just link this unless you want me to say it now, but
we'll cut that out.
We'll link it.
We'll link it.
We'll link it. But if you're interested in New Zealand, you want to be studied as a female ultra runner, man, I would jump at this opportunity. It'd be super cool. You know, the super sapiens, like how they have the, like monitoring your blood glucose, levels. I think they're going to be using that, but kind of in a more long-term setting.
Cool. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting area of research. And we've complained many a times that the research is lacking with female athletes in general, with females in general. So, if you meet their criteria and you live in New Zealand, please do reach out to them to volunteer, because it is hard to get test subjects for these research projects. So please help this PhD candidate or whomever it is out, because that'll be so cool for us to get to talk about down the road. I will slam. I've got a good slam from friend of the pod, Logan Williams, who is a attorney and runner. And he's got a really interesting backstory. He's a really interesting dude in general, but as a former collegiate athlete and a former climber and now a runner, he's experienced his own fair share of body dysmorphia and body image issues and disordered eating patterns. And so both Keely and I have gotten to share some time with him over the last couple months, and we're really hoping to be able to have him on for an interview down the road here to specifically talk about the male side of, RED-S, of disordered eating, of body image issues within male athletes. So I think that's really, really cool. And we will be so excited to share that with you and with Logan, hopefully in the new year.
Yeah. Yeah. And my slam is just like kind of a shout out to everyone who's messaged us about finally taking off time and taking an off season. Is like, we hear you and we're so stoked for you. And like, it's okay to take it, and your body's going to thank you so much. So for all who decided to take one or in the midst of one and we're a little bit scared to be in it and like nervous to take time off, like your body's going to thank you. And Hilly's going to embark on hers like ASAP and get all the recovery in and just crush the off season, because she just absolutely crushed her race, but it wouldn't be possible without actually letting yourself rest as well. So rest is important.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you all for listening. Continue to slide into our DMs, because without you, this probably wouldn't be possible. You guys inspire us in so many different ways and have been providing great topics and insights. And we're listening, and we're going to do them, and we're going to talk about them. So keep sliding into our DMs. We will talk to you next time.